Okay, so an abolishing operation, A is a value altering effect that increases the value of a reinforcer. B is a behavior altering effect that increases the value of a reinforcer. C is a value altering effect that decreases the value of a reinforcer, or D is a behavior altering effect that decreases the value of a reinforcer. So we have a big clue here, which is all of our answers say value of a reinforcer. So the correct answer here is C, is a value altering effect that decreases the value of a reinforcer. So because all of them say value of a reinforcer at the end, it's really easy to pick the first part, which is it's not going to be a behavior altering effect because we're talking about it changing the value of the reinforcer. So it's always going to be a value altering effect. So our only real options are A and C. So a behavior altering effect is going to either be an evasive effect or an evocative effect, but it can't actually change the value of the reinforcer. It changes the frequency of the behavior associated with it. So an establishing operation is an increase in the reinforcing effectiveness of a stimulus. It's a value altering effect that makes something more effective as a reinforcer. And an abolishing operation is a decrease in the reinforcing effectiveness of a stimulus. So it is something that makes something less effective as a reinforcer. So let's look at an abolishing operations example. This makes my brain make sense, so hopefully it'll help for yours. So if I had just eaten a bunch of food, so that's my AO, my abolishing operation, and I see pie sitting on the table, I'm probably not going to ask for pie because pie is not going to be an effective reinforcer because I've just eaten a bunch of food, right? So the abative effect is on the response. The abative effect is a behavior altering effect. That affects the response. It makes me less likely to do responses that normally get me pie. And the AO, which is the abolishing operation, makes pie a less effective reinforcer. So it's usually a feeling or something sort of that's happening internally for us that makes something more effective or less effective as a reinforcer. And if you think about it, this happens all the time. Like, have you ever been where you've been with people for a whole weekend, maybe at a conference or at work or something, and you're just like, I want to be by myself? The fact that you've been with people and are feeling probably overstimulated by the presence of other people is an abolishing operation for people and the attention of people as a reinforcer. Now, we all have different thresholds of that, but it still can function in that way. And if you hadn't been with people, if you were like, Tom Hanks in Castaway, and you hadn't seen people for years, that's going to be an establishing operation for any type of people. I mean, in that movie, he makes a volleyball with a face on it because he's so desperate for human interaction, right? So all this can happen in so many parts of our lives, and it affects our behavior all the time. It's going to change the effectiveness of a reinforcer. So it affects the reinforcer in a contingency, but it's also going to decrease or increase the frequency or some other dimension of specific behaviors that have been associated with that reinforcer in the past. So for pie, I'm probably not going to ask for pie, or I'm less likely to ask for pie if asking for pie usually gets me pie, and pie is not reinforcing to me. I once watched a study group, but they were like motivating operations. It's like, do I care about it? If I care about it, then it's probably going to be a more effective reinforcer. But if I don't care about it, it's going to be a less effective reinforcer. For me, the great example of this would be like, if you're like, hey, Cass, if you do blank, then I'll make you go to CrossFit class. Like, I'd be like, yeah, I don't care about that. I want to go to CrossFit. No, thank you. Right? Not an effective reinforcer. But if suddenly I really needed very muscular arms for some reason, that might change the effectiveness of CrossFit. Then I may be like, I wish I could join a CrossFit gym. And knowing myself, I would join that gym and then not go because it would be reinforcing to join the gym and to pretend like I was going to be that person and then not actually be that person, right? So it's like these affect our behavior at all times at any given moment. So this is an example of an establishing operation example, just to give you like the converse of this. So if I was very hungry, so this is an establishing operation, this is going to make pie more effective as a reinforcer, and it's going to have the evocative effect of increasing the frequency of asking for pie, increases any behaviors that have led to pie in the past. So in this case, asking for pie is going to be the thing that normally leads to pie. And it's going to increase this because I want pie, because I care about pie, because I'm hungry. So you see, none of this is touching the future behavior. None of this is touching the stimulus. The only thing that motivating operations do is they change the effectiveness of a reinforcer, and because of that, they change the frequency of any behaviors that have led to that in the past or not led to that in the past, depending if we're talking about reinforcement or punishment.